25, and Donald Trump's trade war is off again. Well, not really. Canada really, really wants a trade war. So the premiers are threatening to continue. Well, some premiers are threatening to continue with their action. But Donald Trump said, forget about that whole tariff thing. 25%, shmenny to 5%. We're not doing it. So that's very, very interesting. EB is pissed. And I don't know. He's done a terrible job managing things, so it's interesting that he's mad at Donald Trump. Danielle Smith doesn't trust the federal government, and she goes through why, and that she's not going to take $40 billion out of the Alberta economy just on the say-so of the Canadian government, because they have lost all their credibility, and she doesn't trust them or believe them. Ford's going to go ahead with retaliatory tariffs, even though there's a pause, because why not? Why not? Let's poke Trump even more. Trudeau is crying again, so. And people seem to be, I don't think it plays well, right? Like, crying is never how you get the girl back. Honestly, it's just more alienating. It's like, oh, please go away. Last days of this government, says Trudeau, which is very interesting. Trudeau is a Zionist, so we're going to dig into that a little bit. I've got a Reddit thread that I thought was interesting that reflected on this. And Carney is dodging taxes in Canada, and that seems to be a big deal. Although, right in the twilight of this campaign, is it going to matter? Does anybody trust Carney at all? Who trusts Carney at this point? I can't imagine. Anyway, there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, Cat Turd is responding to Donald Trump. Donald Trump says, after speaking with President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico, I've agreed that Mexico will not be required to pay tariffs on anything that falls under the USMCA agreement. This agreement is until April 2nd. I did this as an accommodation and out of respect for President Sheinbaum. Our relationship has been a very good one, and we are working hard together on the border, both in terms of stopping illegal aliens from entering the United States and likewise stopping fentanyl. Thank you to President Sheinbaum for your hard work and cooperation. And Cat Turd says, this is a huge jab at Trudeau, LOL. This is 11:43 a.m. yesterday, and basically tariffs were supposed to be in effect, and it doesn't seem like tariffs ever came into effect. I don't know that anybody has been charged a tariff on the United States side, because it's harmful for the United States, right? It would be harmful for the customers of the United States to have to pay more when they were expecting, if you ordered a trinket and instead of the trinket costing $300, it now costs $375. That's 25% tariff on $300, right? $25 per 100. Isn't that how it works? So $375, that would be, you'd blame Trump for that, right? And then you may not like Trump as much. So I think he's playing us a bit, but at the same time, it's very interesting. And Naya says, trolling, Trump waives 25% tariff on Canada at 3:30. So 11 o'clock in the morning, he had a call with Trudeau and said, Trudeau is silly and nothing's going to happen. Basically, we're going to take off these tariffs for Mexico, and then kind of let Trudeau twist in the wind, and then made this announcement, 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico waived until April 2nd. So U.S. President Donald Trump on Thursday exempted goods from both Canada and Mexico under North American Trade Pact for a month from the 25% tariffs that he had imposed earlier this week. The latest twist in fast shifting trade policy that is whipsawed. I've never heard that. Whipsawed financial markets and business leaders. Maybe that's a finance term. This exemption, which will expire on April 2nd, covers both of the two largest U.S. trading partners. Trump had earlier only mentioned an extension for Mexico, but the amended tariff order initially issued on Tuesday covers Canada as well. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick earlier Thursday said he expected Mr. Trump would grant this temporary exemption to most imports from Canada and Mexico until April 2nd. So if you haven't moved your company to the United States yet, get on it. Get on it. What are you waiting for? We've delayed these tariffs twice. Don't you think we're serious? And don't call me Shirley. Ryan says, meanwhile, in USA, okay, so Jason is highlighting it's been 3 months since Trump threatened tariffs. Can anyone point to one concrete thing the Liberals have done to move Canadian resources development forward on an urgent basis? Well, Mark Carney moved his company to the United States, so that's one. B, find new markets for Canadian products and services, including energy. I can't, not one. Just the Mark Carney thing. That's all I can think of. And that's kind of self-serving, really. It doesn't help Canadians as such, unless you think helping Dear Leader helps Canadians, because, soon Dear Leader will be Mark Carney. So that's interesting to me. And Ryan says, in the United States, however, what have they done? They've secured $500 billion from Apple to invest in AI infrastructure and manufacturing in the United States, $5 billion of Rivian's new EV plant in Indiana, $700 million for Honda moving production from Mexico to Ohio. And I've heard rumors that there are more car companies looking to reshore their car auto markets. maybe that's good. Maybe that's good for the United States. Maybe that's bad for the United States, right? Who knows? Because like different places have different problems. And so like in Canada, maybe high taxes and labor market, but it may have advantages that offset that, right? Whereas in the United States, if you have everything within 10 square blocks, you may have other issues that aren't easily solved locally, right? Does that make sense? So like maybe it's beneficial, even though there's negatives, maybe it's beneficial to have a plant in Ontario and a plant in Detroit. But at the same time, like if I'm the owner of Ford or something like that, and I've just got off a phone call with President Trump, and Trump wants you to onshore your jobs, and he's going to give incentives for you to do that. It makes the decision easy. You know, like maybe that push offsets all those benefits that having that Ontario plant offered in the first place. Maybe the concessions being presented by Trump fix a whole bunch of different problems. Who knows? I don't, but I'm just saying it sounds like he's trying to do what he thinks is right, which is onshoring jobs. So who knows? I don't know. Like if it'll work out, who knows? But we'll see. 3.2 billion from Stellantis. Hey, wait a second. They're investing. Didn't we spend more than that? Just our government and our tax dollars, more than that on Stellantis? Anyway, they reopened their Illinois plant for electric Dodge muscle cars. Want, want. And $65 billion from a Taiwanese semiconductor building 3 chip plants in Arizona. So there you go. We need Pierre Poilievre to put Canada first, says Ryan. I don't know that that's going to be the solution, but this is interesting. This is the Brian Lilly interview with, what's this guy's name? I can't remember his name. Steve Bannon. And he is like a Trump guy. And he's talking about how Canada's in a bad way, worse infiltrated than the United States. And he says if Canadians don't wake up, it's a lot like Europeans in the summer of 1939, basically turning a blind eye to the reality of the situation that they were actually presented with. They didn't feel a war. They didn't see any kind of wars, so they didn't see anything to concern themselves with. And he's saying Canada is in the same boat, and you're losing your sovereignty to China, not America, and you've better watch out. And I think that's an interesting take. Here's Brian Lilly and Steve Bannon. I think it's Steve. Here we go.
Look, as badly as we're infiltrated, Canada's actually worse. And Trudeau's exacerbated this. This is something the Canadian people got to wake up to. You're losing your sovereignty as you speak. That's why your crisis on your northern border. The irony in Canada, given everything through valor of arms and courage that you've defended, now what was always strategically your greatest, the thing you had greatest, which was your northern border and kind of the Arctic, now becomes your greatest exposure to actual losing territorial integrity and sovereignty, the Chinese Communist Party, which has already infiltrated Canada. Look at Huawei. Look at all the situations in Canada. They're at war just because, remember, in Chinese Communist Party doctrine, if they have to start like Sun Tzu, if they have to start shooting, they think the kinetic part, which has already started in Europe and Ukraine, the kinetic part of the war is where they don't want to take on the foreign devils, right? Because the foreign devils know how to man up and know how to fight. What they want to do is unrestricted warfare, is defeat the West even before any guns are fired. And they're quite far advanced in the United States, and I would argue they're farther advanced in Canada. So don't people sit there and go, well, we're not really at war. That's like people in Europe in 1930, in the summer of 1939, sitting there going, we're actually not at war. It's a beautiful summer here. And the clouds of war were all over them. They just couldn't see over the horizon.
Canada, the clouds of war are everywhere, and it's interesting because our government is downshifting to have us focus on domestic matters and not even governmental matters, internal party politics, when all of these crises are happening. All of these crises are happening around the world, and all our politicians are poking Donald Trump in the eye, and that's weird. It seems weird. Freedom Girl says, let's talk about this. Doug Ford says Ontario will go ahead with 25% tax on electricity it provides to the United States on Monday. So we'll start that trade war. Don't you worry, Justin. And so it's interesting because fentanyl seems to be a big deal for Donald Trump, and we're not doing enough, says Donald Trump, but we'll still mitigate this 25% tariff. We'll see. I don't know. I think it's maybe a saber to rattle rather than a real thing that is going to be implemented now. Like after 2 delays, I think that there's maybe structural problems that prevent this from actually being actioned. So But on the other side of maybe fentanyl is a problem, Robert says one of three Canadian banks are profiting handsomely from money laundering. Here's an example from BMO, from BMO mortgage that was secured by Sinaloa cartel cash to buy a property held by a proxy by Kelowna Khalistani Tiger Force, Punjabi Mafia, crime family. Oh, Canada, right? Like we've got to save Canada to make sure that Eastern money launderers can retain their value, okay? Because their drug money is untouchable. You don't want to mess with that, right? Have you seen Breaking Bad? Walter White will get pissed at you. Well, in this case, it's not Walter White. It's some Chinese mafia person or Punjabi mafia person. Either way, probably worse than Walter White. Robert continues, here's how it works. The Sinaloa cartel fronts the money for a down payment on the mortgage to a Punjabi mafioso. In the deal, the cartel may demand its money, requiring a sale in which the Khalistani gets to keep the capital gains in a planto poma deal. 3 Purwal blueberries and third properties have 2 examples of liquidations. In the deal, you give the money or get plomo, lead, meaning a bullet, and the Khalistani gets to keep the profits from farming. Money is padded to make interest payments. So it sounds very... Tulsa King is basically like you're in the club, but if you're in the club, you've got to be producing. So every week you kind of owe an envelope of money to the boss, and then when you give the envelope of money to the boss, everything's good, and it doesn't really matter how you make the money. It's just that you make the money, right? And so it's very interesting. This whole thing seems very organized, crimey, and Canadians, by and large, I don't think engage in this kind of stuff. A lot of people get a job and work a regular job, pay their bills, and do kind of regular things, and would be. I don't know that I'd have the stones to do something like this. If I knew I was participating in something like this, I think I would be guilty. I feel like I would have a guilty conscience. I would be awake at night, and I'd be like, oh man, I can't do this. So I don't know. I just don't. And maybe I'm projecting like my feelings onto most Canadians, but I feel like we were all kind of people in my generation, who's around 40 years old. We kind of had this collective morality bestowed on us by our parents and the culture, right? Where, certain things are acceptable, certain things are not, right? And weirdly, they tried to use that morality to turn cigarettes from something that were acceptable to something that is not acceptable. And now go light up a cigarette in front of people who are like, well-to-do. And it's like, whoa, hold on a second. Amazing Polly gets shit all the time for smoking. Anyway, back to Doug Ford. He's really going to do this. Ontario won't walk back retaliatory measures despite 1-month tariff exemption for many Canadian goods. So there's money laundering for fentanyl, and now Doug Ford wants to start a trade war with the United States because they're going to start a trade war with us. And they're threatening a trade war with us. And I think that there's more to the trade war as well, obviously. But it's very interesting that Doug Ford is not interested in playing ball with negotiations. Here's just a little bit of this article from CTV. Ontario will be going ahead with its retaliatory measures against the United States despite a 1-month reprieve on the 25% tariff placed on many Canadian goods. Reuters is reporting that U.S. President Donald Trump has exempted goods from both Canada and Mexico that fall under an existing free trade agreement until April 2nd. However, a spokesperson for the Premier's office has confirmed that U.S. booze will remain off LCBO shelves, and a planned 25% export tax on the electricity that Ontario sends to 3 U.S. states will still go into effect as planned on Monday. Trump needs to drop tariffs entirely, Ivana Yelich said in an email to CTV News. The Premier later posted on social media that a pause on some tariffs means nothing. Until President Trump removes the threat of tariffs for good, we will be relentless, Ford wrote. I still don't think we win this trade war, especially if we're not willing to negotiate rationally and reasonably. So I hope I'm wrong about that. Jay says if it's not from the United States, it's probably from China. We have a big trade deficit with China too, actually. Ryan says a couple of provincial governments removed U.S. liquor from the shelves to teach the United States a lesson. That'll show them. All the liquor they removed from the shelves is paid for. It's already paid for, because when you inventory a store, you buy the inventory, you don't borrow it, right? It's paid for. All of that is money that we've spent out already on inventory, and the Canadian government, the Ontario government, the Alberta government, well, maybe not the Alberta government, theirs is private, right? But Ontario is not. Ontario is a Crown Corporation, LCBO. And so Ontario government spent taxes that will not be recouped because the liquors unsaleable at this point in time, which is ridiculous. So anyway, and if we take off all of the American products off the shelves, we'd be emptying out grocery stores, right? In a temper tantrum of a trade war because of Trump man mean. Come on, really? So Mars, Coca-Cola, Costco, Kirkland, Kraft, Danone, Mondelez, I don't know that one, Nestle, General Mills, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, PepsiCo. Did you recognize some of those names? Like, yeah, if you go to the grocery store and they removed all of the American brands, guess what? Like, it would be a very, very sparse grocery trip, and you may not get products that you have come to expect and rely on, right? And so what Canada is engaging in is stupidity, in my opinion. Here is Danielle Smith, and she's talking about how she will not allow the Americans or the federal government to take control of taxing energy and allowing the federal government in Canada to take control of the $40 billion that would allow them to control. She says, absolutely effing not. I added the effing. Here we go.
If the federal government can compensate Albertans, for example, for whatever losses they end up taking, should that be the route they decide to pursue? Why is that not satisfactory for you? Like, why doesn't that add up? Because I think to a lot of Canadians that would be one way out of it.
Well, I noticed Ontario Premier Doug Ford didn't ask for a tariff on electricity. He imposed a surcharge himself so that he could receive the money, so that he could make sure it was directed to his people. And I must tell you, there's no circumstances under which I would acquiesce to a major tariff being put on Alberta Energy to go to Ottawa so Ottawa could decide how it's distributed. And quite frankly, the trust is gone with the federal government. They canceled pipelines. They've banned exports off the West Coast. They have put in a net zero power reg. They talked about an emissions cap. So if you think I'm going to believe that they'll take $40 billion out of our economy and just trust them, that it's going to come back, I don't. So no, it's not on. We're not going to agree to that. And nor should Ontarians and Quebecers want us to, because if the Americans retaliate by putting also restrictions on energy, it's Ontarians and Quebecers who are going to be harmed by that. 100% of the product that they get to heat their homes and run their cars comes from the United States. So just know that I'm acting in the interest of all of the country and saying that you don't want to play a war on energy. Canada will be worse off for it. I would say let's find a way to work on the things that we can agree on. And we've managed to get some great agreement at the table on the kind of goods that should be tariff because we can find alternatives to them. We're also acting in concert to make sure that we're buying locals to support Alberta and Canadian products, as well as to support the products with the countries we have free trade agreements with that are being honored. And so let's find areas that we can agree on rather than areas that we'll disagree on.
Even if it holds back our response, even if it holds back one of our biggest pieces of leverage?
Bashi, there's no circumstance under which I would agree to another tax on Alberta that takes $40 billion out of Alberta. You can ask me as much as you like. The answer is no.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note.
So there you go. It's interesting how Vasi tried to ask the same question in different ways to get a different answer, right? EB is angry. He's super mad, right? And he's shaking his finger at Donald Trump. How dare you create uncertainty? Why are you giving children drugs? Why are you... Right? I mean, jeepers creepers, why are you allowing money laundering and the Vancouver method to continue? Why is your government turning a blind eye to a whole bunch of corruption? There's a whole bunch of questions I have for Dave Eby, and the outrageous anger he's got for Donald Trump just doesn't quite cut it for me.
We are not going to accept these continual threats, this continued uncertainty. We're going to stand up for Canadians. This is unacceptable. And we're going to ensure that the Americans understand how pissed off we are, how unified we are, how committed we are to working as a country to stand up for each other and our own independence on our own 2 feet. And I say we don't let up until the president takes the threat off the table.
I feel like we're acting kind of like the crazy member of a relationship, like, because there's crazy guys and there's crazy girls, right? And I have experience with crazy girls because I'm a guy. Maybe I'm the crazy guy, probably sometimes. But like, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter what the other party does. The crazy one is going to take issue with it. It doesn't matter It doesn't matter how it's done. It doesn't matter what the intent is. It doesn't matter like, well, we're trying to fix this problem and you agreed that we should probably fix this problem. Canada, you said that you'd fix the border and the fentanyl and you don't like having, fentanyl deaths. You said you'd work with us on this. And then all of a sudden it's like, this is not good enough. I can't believe you're doing this to us. You blah, blah, blah. It's like, whoa, hold on a second. I just asked what you wanted for dinner. Like, wow, this is crazy, right? And so it's not like you can easily break up with us if you're the United States, right? And it seems like Trump's trying. Like, we got home and the key's gone, man. Like, what are you saying here? Like, I don't understand. I'll be upstairs. If you don't know what's wrong, then you don't know me. Libs of TikTok says Governor Trudeau is crying. Trump broke him. So here's Trudeau crying again.
On a personal level, I've made sure that every single day in this office, I put Canadians first, that I have people's backs. And that's why I'm here to tell you all that we got you. Even in the very last days of this government.
I like that. I wanted you to hear that without the meme. Okay, so the memesters have been out working, and so this is Cat Turd and Donald Trump playing a violin for Justin Trudeau and his "We got you" nonsense. Okay, here's.
On a personal level, I've made sure that every single day in this office, I put Canadians first, that I have people's backs. And that's why I'm here to tell you all that we got you. Even in the very last days of this government, we will not let Canadians down.
I'm glad that he said this, even in the last days of this government. It means he understands that his government is going to come to an end soon, right? And so he's saying, oh, we got you, right? Also, he's saying I'm a Zionist, which I think is a strange thing. And we're going to explore that just a little bit. But the context of this within the tariffs, it doesn't really matter. It just goes to the broader scope of things. And it used to be that being a Zionist or an open Zionist or something to that effect was not good. It wasn't something that you would like talk to people about. And I don't think the connotation was, I want Israel to peacefully coexist in their property or whatever. All of that is loaded, very, very loaded. But I think that it's interesting because it's so loaded that Trudeau's just throwing this out there. Like, oh, by the way, so okay, weird, right? Here's our Zionist government, Trudeau.
No one in Canada should ever be afraid to call themselves a Zionist. I am a Zionist.
Weird, right? So I came across that this morning. And then I wanted to explain, like, there's layers to it. It's, ogres have layers, Zionism has layers. And deleted, this is from a Reddit post from 2022 or 23. It says 1 year ago, but on the Google thing it said from 22, so that's more than 1 year ago. Anyway, it says, I find that Zionism is similar to people calling themselves a feminist, which I thought, oh, Trudeau calls himself a feminist all the time. And he continues, or this person continues, some people think that feminism means a right to vote, equal pay for work, access to birth control without a doctor asking if you're married, everything from Susan B. Anthony's 1960s era. Some people think feminism is dismantling the patriarchy or believe that women who say they were raped and believing women who say they were raped and an abortion past 26 weeks, which I don't understand that at all, but whatever. He's accurate. In some people, that's their definition of feminism, but I think those people are broken. Anyway, regardless. And some people think that it means trans women are women and trans women are endangering cis women with dehumanizing language. So, right, you can have feminism that goes too far and feminism that goes like way, way too far. And he continues, he says, they all say they are feminists. You need to ask probing questions to determine where they fall on the spectrum. He says some Zionists say that it means a continuation of Judaism and a one-state solution that acknowledges Judaism is sufficient, so moderate. Some say it means a two-state solution because the Jewish right to self-determination is the same as the Palestinian right. Some say it means greater Israel, and Jews are already giving up a lot by not asking for half of Jordan, which according to the Bible was controlled by the Israelites in the days of David and Saul. So there's different layers is what I don't want to go off on feminism or anything like that. I'm just saying, similar to feminism, there's layers of Zionism. Which layer does Trudeau fall under? And is this really an appropriate thing to be introducing at this point in your government. Like, oh, by the way, I'm on the way out, but if Israel has any asks, I'm open to it. Right? Like, okay, thanks, man. Like, what? This is insane. It just seems crazy to me. Here's Jagmeet Singh attacking Donald Trump. Singh wants Trump not to attend the G7. He says, Donald Trump has threatened our sovereignty, our economy, and our global stability. He should not be welcome to come to the G7 summit in Canada this summer. And then he's got a meme, and it says, Trump is a fascist. Ban him from the G7 summit in Canada. Sign here to ban Donald Trump from Canada at the G7 summit. Ridiculous. It'll be interesting to see Trump in Alberta, though. I don't know where the G7's happening. Is there any access? Is there any kind of like, is it in a city? Is it in Alberta? Calgary? Excuse me. It's in Alberta, but is it in like Calgary, or is it in a remote compound somewhere where there's owl statues or something? The Feddersen says, why is Angus Reid polling, asking if Canada should join the European Union? Also was asked if I think Trump would send U.S. troops into Canada. What in propaganda's name is going on here? Do you worry about being invaded by Donald Trump? No, Angus Reid? Like, what? Are you drunk, Angus Reid? Did Elizabeth May write this poll? The Canadian government has said it could respond to U.S. tariffs in several ways. Do you support or oppose Canada doing the following? Exploring how to join the European Union. Yeah, okay, that's not great. And the U.S. might do other things to pressure Canada. How likely do you think it is that the following might happen? The U.S. sending troops into Canada, very likely, somewhat unlikely, very unlikely. The U.S. sending troops into Canada, that'd be something else. Remember the I Am Canadian guy? I think they got the I Am Canadian guy back. And so Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau are sharing this. And it is absolute pure propaganda. It feels very familiar, but it's very, very dangerous. And it's interesting that this guy agreed to do this. The picture they've put up of Trump supporters, it's got Hegseth, it's got Homan, it's got Elon Musk. This is his attorney, I think. Or is this Tulsi? Is this Tulsi? I can't tell. And I don't know everybody of all the pictures here, but it's interesting. This shouldn't be taken seriously, but everybody in the leadership's pushing this. So Jagmeet Singh, Justin Trudeau. I'm surprised Chrystia Freeland and the rest didn't push this out as well. I wonder how much this cost. I wonder who paid for it. Because wasn't the first one a Molson Canadian ad? Like, I think it was a Molson Canadian ad, wasn't it? So here's just a bit of this. I think we're going to get to the poutine part. They do the poutine thing, and it's really like Oprah. Okay, it's ham-fisted and shoehorned, and it doesn't feel natural. It feels eye-rolling. The whole thing does. It's not. If you're in the club, you'll eat this up. So the liberals out there and the woke people who are still left, they'll love this stuff. They'll be like, oh, it's so good to see him again. Blah 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 bullshit. But anybody who's awake can see through this for what it is. And I think this is absolute pure propaganda and concerning because there's a medium-high production cost to this, right? The talent, the backdrop, all of it, and the promotion. So I don't know. I feel like it stinks like propaganda to me. Here you go.
Hey, I know it's in our nature to cut a guy some slack, give him the benefit of the doubt, like maybe he was confused or just joking or just maybe really needed a double-double. But this isn't that guy. These aren't those people, and those are not the Rockies. They make a lot of mistakes. They mistake our modesty for meekness, our kindness for consent, our nation for another star on their flag, and our love of a hot, cheesy poutine with their love of a hot, cheesy Putin. They think they can bully us.
No. So I haven't watched more than that because I was like, I just can't stomach it. Jagmeet Singh says, we are Canadian. And Justin Trudeau says, it's good to have you back. Nah. Not buying it. Not buying it even a tiny little bit. Not even a little bit. So prorogation, I've got some news. And not shocking, they lost. So I guess it's totally legal for them to prorogue Parliament in order for the Liberals to have an internal leadership race. I mean, what's wrong with us for having an issue with that? The Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom says, breaking news, today the federal court will issue a decision on the constitutional challenge to the Prime Minister's advice to prorogue Parliament. Stay tuned for a link to the decision and our analysis of it. That was at 1 p.m. At almost 5 p.m., we are still waiting for the decision. So by that point, everybody said it's like 3 days from or 2 days, because it's supposed to be the 9th. Yesterday was 3 days. 3 days from when they're choosing their new leader, and like they've waited a long time. It doesn't seem like this is going to go the way of the Canadian people. And indeed, the speculation was correct. Justice Center says, follow this thread for highlights of our analysis of today's federal court decision. Tonight, Chief Justice Paul Crampton released the decision in the historic challenge to the Prime Minister's decision to advise the prorogation of Parliament 44, and continues. Chief Justice Crampton disagrees with the respondents, the Canada Attorney General, that the courts have no role to play in this matter. Chief Justice Crampton states the court has jurisdiction to review the decision. At the federal court hearing in Ottawa on February 14th, counsel for the Attorney General argued that the court has no jurisdiction to review the decision. Chief Justice Crampton stated that the applicants failed to demonstrate that the Prime Minister exceeded the limits of his legal authority by advising prorogation in the circumstances of the case. On their face, those other reasons for advising prorogation related either to the business of Parliament or to what appeared to be the Prime Minister's view of public interest. It's not the court's role to question the merits of wisdom of those reasons, reads the report. Chief Justice Crampton remained mindful of the court's refraining from undue influence with the other branches of government. Chief Justice Crampton disagrees that the circumstances surrounding or the effects of the decision to advise prorogation in this case are similarly exception, a reference to the circumstances surrounding the effects of the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson's decision to prorogue in the United Kingdom in 2019. For these reasons, Chief Justice Crampton dismissed the application. In Chief Justice Crampton's view, there are 5 principal issues at play in this case. And those are, does the court have jurisdiction? If so, is the issue of whether the Prime Minister exceeded the scope of his authority in making the decision justiciable? If so, do the applicants have standing to challenge the decision? If so, did the Prime Minister exceed his authority in making the decision? If so, what is the appropriate remedy? So I think he failed on number 2. The Prime Minister does have the ability to make this decision, even though I think that probably not, but I mean, I'm not a judge and I'm not a lawyer and I don't have the time to dig deeply into this. A lot of people are upset about the decision. A lot of people think that it was sandbagged and it was kind of all people, as soon as it started, it was destined to fail. Like, already people thought that, no, it's not going to work. For various reasons, people on the left were saying that they can prorogue whenever they want, they can do whatever they want, basically, and people on the right were saying that it wasn't a strong case because Canada is not the same as the United Kingdom. So everybody was kind of, there weren't a lot of people who were thinking that this was going to work necessarily, but there was an outside kind of hope that people were going to be held, or their argument was going to be accepted and they were going to legislate them back to work, but I guess not. So we'll have to wait until now. The rumor is that Carney's going to call an election by March 16th with voting day on April 22nd or maybe April 20th. I don't know. Who knows? If the Trump tariffs come in during that, that'll be interesting because they're supposed to come in on April 2nd. So if we're in the middle of an election, super duper fun, right? But at this point, who knows what's going to happen, but it doesn't look like the courts are going to save us. But we already knew that. I think we definitely already knew that. Here is Elon Musk. He's talking about Ukraine, and here is Rubio, and Rubio's talking about how, well, I'll prep you here. Marco Rubio said the U.S. was in a proxy war with Russia. If the U.S. is in a proxy war with Russia and Ukraine is just the proxy, then Ukraine doesn't matter, and the only peace deal that matters is between the United States and Russia. And so, if that's true, and Rubio's articulating that it is true, then this whole thing is kind of taking on a different meaning. Alex says, we have Kellogg stating the need to reset relations with Russia to secure Americans' vital national interests and ultimately to stop U.S. entanglement in endless proxy war. We have moved past the we are not party to this war to the new reality of we are in a proxy war. The truth is that this is more than a proxy war with Russia. The collective West was and remains at war with Russia. Ukraine men do the fighting, but everything else from money to weapons and missile strikes to targeting is the collective West. So yeah, it's very interesting. And so if the United States normalizes with Russia, what does that mean for the broader conflict? Because the broader conflict doesn't seem like it's over. It seems like Europe's trying to arm faster than Trump can turn this conflict off. Here's Marco Rubio talking about this. It was Ash Wednesday recently, so this is Ash Wednesday, presumably. He's got ashes in the form of a cross on his forehead. This is not by accident, put front and center on purpose, sending a message. Who do you think that message is for? This is the Secretary of State. This is a big position next to Trump. This is like the hand of the king, okay? It sends a message. If you think it doesn't, well, I'll tell you it does. Here we go.
It's been very clear from the beginning that President Trump views this as a protracted, stalemated conflict, and frankly, it's a proxy war between nuclear powers, the United States helping Ukraine and Russia. And it needs to come to an end. And no one has any idea or any plan to bring it to an end. The plan of the Ukrainians up to now and their allies on Capitol Hill and the people you talk to in other countries is, let's just keep giving them as much as they need for as long as it takes. That's not a strategy. It's been very clear from the beginning that President Trump...
And he's saying it's not a strategy to win. It's not. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful